enough to change my life. And so today, the one that I have chosen for this talk is called You Are Never Alone. You're never alone. The presence of the living God is with you all of the time. Now, I often say that God is all of you, but you are not all of God. And I say that because if there's anybody in here in a recovery, from a recovery path, you know that we were told, look, there is a God and you're not it. And they told us that because they didn't want us to think that we were ruling the world anymore. And oftentimes when you are in the height of addiction, that is what you think. So we changed that a little bit to say there is a God and it is in you, and it is all of you, but you are not all of God. So that we know that we are part of a co-created universe. That's our teaching, however, that the presence of God is within you all of the time. And you cannot separate the truth of who you are. You can lose a limb, you can lose your vision, you can lose your hearing, but you cannot lose the truth of who you are, which is the presence of God that is within you. It is not even arguable. And you have access to this universal spirit that's flowing through everyone all of the time. You have access to it. Now, when I say access to the universal spirit, know that using that access to the universal spirit is there is an easier, softer way to do it. And the easier, softer way to access the universal spirit is through prayer, through meditation, and through vision. Now, it's important because you don't need intermediaries. You don't need Buddha. You don't need Jesus. You don't need Lao Tzu. You don't need a minister. You don't need a rabbi. You don't need an imam. You don't need anybody else, because that universal spirit is available to you where you're sitting, everywhere you are, all of the time. But if using meditation and visioning is working for you all of the time, keep it up. That's a great thing. If you're not visioning and meditation, get into class and learn how to pray and vision and meditate. But for most of us, the way we access the universal spirit truthfully is through some other human being. It's through somebody else who is in a meat suit. They are your spiritual guides. And those spiritual guides that I'm talking about are not clergy. Those spiritual guides that I'm talking about who are working with you every step of the way might look an awful lot like your neighbor, your spouse, some stranger in the library, a person sitting next to you in a recovery room, your doctor, your adult kids, your mortgage broker, your cellmate, your office mate. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, wanting to work with you. That's what they look like in the flesh. But their spirit is the Spirit of God that is within them. And because of that, you're never alone. God is always with you. Now, we know the way that God works is not always by making us comfortable. We get that. We've experienced it. The way the universe works is when your body and your soul and your spirit are ready for a change, the universal spirit, when you're ready for a growth spurt, when you're ready to get closer to who you are, which is simply God in form, universal spirit will signal it's time for a change. Now, this may be a conversation for change that your spirit is having with somebody else's spirit in a meat suit, and it might even pass up your mind. For instance, I could not believe that my spirit was having a conversation with somebody else's spirit that I should go into ministry, because that is the farthest thing from my conscious mind that there was. But all of a sudden I found myself in ministerial classes. My spirit, it was time for a change. My spirit and the universal spirit through somebody else was signaling to me it was time for a change. Thank you. Yes. The presence of God within us always speaks in success language, and that's how you know it's the presence of God in somebody else's meat suit. They are speaking in success language. Sometimes our mind has put on a filter to protect ourselves that makes it difficult for us to hear the voice of the universal spirit. A way our founder Ernest Holmes might say it is this: your individual spirit is talking to the great universal spirit. Some of you may remember the game Mother May I. Now, I'm not saying your life is a game, and I'm not saying God is a player, so no need for emails. I'm just going to use this as kind of a way to get to this. Mother, may I get some help to stop gossiping? Sure, of course. But if you take too long to get this intention into your conscious mind, I may have to arrange some help for you. And it may not be so much fun. Thankfully, you're never alone. So I can guarantee you there's somebody in your circle who will help you to stop gossiping eventually. Mother, may I get some help to stop sticking my head in the sand about my hurt feelings toward my spouse? Of course. But if you take too long to get this desire into your conscious mind, into your intention setting, if you take too long, I may have to turn up the heat on your discomfort. I may have to bring in a camel and a straw and see what happens when I do. There's an easier, softer way, but I can do it this way also. Mother, may I shape this need I have for drama in my life? Sure. It's causing me pain every second, and it's causing pain for people around me. Your spirit knows that it can't grow in the expression of God that you were intended to be without this drama going away, or at least being minimized to the point where you can really feel who you are. So Great Mother says, yes, of course, but if you can't move this desire from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind, to your willingness to set an intention to stop the drama, then I'm going to have to get some help for you. I will try to get to your attention through broken relationships, through your car being repossessed, through fire in your attic, through all kinds of different ways. Because I will get your attention to help you with your intention as long as it takes. Those of you who are familiar with the story of Jonah and the whale, now you don't have to grow up in a Christian or a Christian church or a Jewish synagogue to have heard the story of Jonah and the whale. Most of us have heard it. I believe that Jonah's internal spirit was talking and saying, it's time for me to change. I believe that that still small voice that the Bible calls God was saying, Jonah, it's time for you to be a bigger expression of who you are. I want to send you to Nineveh to help some people because you're a born helper. I want you to do that. And Jonah did what we do. No, I'm not skilled in that area. No, I don't have any interest in that. No, I don't even want to do that. And so what Jonah did to try to escape was what we often do. And that's what we in recovery call taking a geographic. We take ourselves somewhere else, thinking life will be better, that we can escape that still small voice, that we can escape, but everywhere we go, there we are. And everywhere we go, there God is as well. So Jonah decides to take this geographic and he jumps on a ship, and a great storm comes up, and some spirits in meat suits, some spiritual guides, decide to help him. And they toss him off the ship, and he lands in the belly of a whale. Now, they say for 3 days he stays in the belly of a whale. And every time I tell this story to people, they go, oh my God, 3 days in the darkness of that. Look, I've spent 3 months in darkness around certain issues in my life. Maybe even longer than that. But it took what it took, and it took when he got it. When he got it, what did the whale do? It spit him up right in Nineveh, where God had asked him to go. See, what happens when that still small voice is nagging us for change, we either hear it or the universe will help us hear it in not such comfortable ways. Ernest Holmes has an essay that I think kind of explains how this all works. The essay is called How to Create a Spiritual Chain Reaction. Because see, we are touching other people all of the time in either positive or negative ways, and our spirit guides are touching us all the time in either positive or what we would call negative ways. Are they negative? No. Because it's always good. It's not always happy. But God is always good. So let me just read you the first little, and if you don't have this book, please get it. You know, I know most of you here have taken foundations, and so you're probably familiar with the book, but if you're not, and you don't have it in your library, this is a book that kind of brings things to life and talks about definite issues in our life, how we can get over definite things. You know, I find Science of Mind helpful, but I find this much more readable and much more easy to understand. So let me just read this to you. No one lives entirely by himself. We are all individual parts of humanity. And whether or not we realize it, each is influencing those around him. And each in his turn is being influenced by others. No doubt the thoughts and opinions and actions of the whole world are finally based on what everyone thinks and believes. See, I think it's important for us to begin to create a spiritual chain reaction that lifts ourselves and others up, not only in this country, but in the world. And every time we do a kindness, or every time we help another person, we lift up the energy of the entire world. So I believe that we all have a desire to positively influence each other. And if we want to create a spiritual chain reaction, we could actually end the wars in Jerusalem, in Gaza, in the Ukraine. We can end racism and homophobia and transphobia. We can end all of those things that tend to limit another person because we're afraid if what they have means we don't have. We could create a spiritual chain reaction. But to do that, we're going to have to do some things. And I'm going to look at 3 things. There are tons of things that we can do. You know them as well as I do. But I'm going to review 3 things that you already know, but it doesn't hurt to review when you come to church, does it? The first thing is to understand that all change has to start with you. All change has to start with you. Turn to your neighbor and say, she needs you. Okay, you're saying that's all you're saying. No more. Before you pick up one anti-war sign, before you attend one peace rally, look at your own landscape. Look at your own landscape, your inner and outer landscape. Are you full of resentments? See, when you get to be my age, you have to have a board with big writing on it. Are you full of resentments? Are you full of judgments? Are you spending time rehashing old conversations? I'm going to say stay home from that peace rally and clean up everything. If there ever was even one person in your life with whom you are estranged, even a small estrangement, take this week to call them on the phone. Now that's a hard thing to do, because what we think when we call them on the phone is we have to have an answer to what the estrangement is. Half the time we're not even sure what caused the estrangement, but we know that we've separated, and we've separated not in love. We didn't bless that person or release them, nor did they bless us or release us. There's some sort of angst there. See, I suggest we just call them up and say, you know what, I've been feeling this estrangement. And ask them, what do you think we could do to change it? If we would have the spiritual courage to make that one phone call this week to that one person with whom we feel estranged, and not try and solve it, but just ask them what they think is going on, I believe you would see a change in that relationship that would be so joyous and harmonious. If you really want peace that we say we want, it all has to start with us. If there is a place, is there a place for placards and peace rallies? Of course, I've got a garage full of them. I go to those rallies all of the time. But if what we want is real, everlasting peace, peace that is beyond understanding, you will only find it in what the Persian poet calls the field beyond right and wrong. And that field beyond right and wrong is always meant to be experienced with other people. It's never meant to be experienced alone. Peace is an energy, and it has to be released. And we release it by starting here. You can start a spiritual chain reaction by just making that one phone call and taking time to sit down and say, where in my heart am I holding anger for somebody else? And I don't know about you, we don't know each other well yet, but I will tell you, I am what the news media would call a leftist. They would say, my father used to call, I can't remember, it was a terrible term, but anyway, so it's easy for me to find fault and get angry with people on the other end of the spectrum. My job is to stop right now. Not to find fault. I can find fault with them, but to create a spiritual chain reaction that makes them bad because of what they think and what they feel. That's not easy to do. But if we really want peace in this world, that's what we've got to do. The second thing I want to talk about is to develop a spiritual gift of saying goodbye. You want to start a spiritual chain reaction? Develop the gift of saying goodbye. If someone doesn't want to be around you, say goodbye to them. Say goodbye to them. Remember, this is a spiritual chain reaction. We're allowing our spirit to touch the spirit of one another. And sometimes the best way we can touch that spirit is by gently blessing them and releasing them from our life. You can't hold on to somebody else's spirit. It's not possible. You can't own it. And when we try, we break the spiritual chain reaction. And I'm not just talking about primary relationships, but I'm talking about relationships maybe with your young adult kids, your friends, people at work. If it's their decision to walk away from you, say goodbye to them and move on. Much as you might try, it will never work to say, come back here, and all of the variations you and I have tried to do that. Ordering the person, threatening the person, trying to make the person jealous. All of those may be good temporary fixes, but in the end, they're not going to work. If your spirit is going in another direction, it's only temporary. And some of us are trying to get other people to stay when their spirit is simply going in another direction. Now, like the other things, saying goodbye is not easy. I have to learn that in recovery. Saying goodbye to my drinking buddies was actually painful. I wanted them to come with me, but eventually I had to say, our spirits are going in a different direction. And I have to release you now. I've had to learn to say that in my church. There were times in my church when people would leave and I would drive myself nuts trying to get them to come back, to hear a spiritual nourishment that was no longer feeding them. Instead of just saying, I bless you now. I bless you and let you go. Let's remember that spiritual practices are not just prayer and meditation. Saying goodbye to people and situations are powerful spiritual practices. The last one I want to talk about is remember what we teach here. What we teach here is it's all God and it's all good. Now remember, again, it's not all God and happy. There are times when the good things in my life, the things that have spit me into the body of a whale, did not make me happy. But they did make me good. It took me a while to get there, but it made me a better person. I'm going to ask you to recommit to a spiritual practice that I try to remind myself at least twice a year. 21 consecutive days of no complaining. Now here's the thing. The most operative word and the most important word in that little sentence is consecutive days of no complaining. So you might get to day 6, and all of a sudden, you know, your mother-in-law calls and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden you're off to the races, calling your posse, complaining. Go back to day 1. Go back to day 1. Now, you will enliven your spirit and set off a chain reaction that love will put on the fast track. It will put joy on the fast track. It will put peace on the fast track. I'm going to give you a phrase that I use sometimes to help me. It's such an odd phrase that it actually kind of shocks me into a different way of thinking. And that phrase is this: God, that's great. Say that with me. God, that's great. So the next time somebody tries to trash you, God, that's great. The next time somebody cuts you off on the road, God, that's great. Whatever the thing that makes you want to complain and break that 21 days, God, that's great. So that's what I have for you today. And I want to say this. I am about to start a class that I'm going to invite you to right now. I have some flyers with. It's called Black AF History, an unwhitewashed version story of America. And it's an 8-week class. It's taught by myself and another minister, Reverend Brenda Lambert. And it is an opportunity for us to explore an African-American historian. Now this guy is, he's a columnist for the Grail. This has been meticulously researched. So I'm not bringing stuff that is opinion. It has been researched events that happened to America in the African-American community that I had never heard of. And listen, I've been doing anti-racism work for a long time, and I have never heard of 80% of what is in this book. It's a fabulous book. It's so we're going to be doing it on Sundays at 1:30 on Zoom only. It's a national program. We have some great contributors coming to speak, some headliners in the New Thought movement that Reverend Suzanne has probably heard of from this week. David Alexander will be doing some of it. Reverend Andrea Earl will be contributing. So we're going to have guest speakers, as well as we'll break into small groups and do some small group work in this class. So I encourage you to consider it. There's a free class coming up next Sunday, and that kind of gives you an idea of how the class will flow, what the class will be about, kind of the energy of the class. I will say this: it is an absolutely safe way for white people to learn about the African American experience. And, you know, sometimes white people get into situations where they want to learn, but it doesn't feel safe because they feel like they're being blamed for what's happening. You're not going to feel blamed for it. You're probably going to want to cringe a little bit about what our ancestors did, but you will be safe in this program. So what will happen is, if you're interested, I'm going to leave this back here. Before I leave, put your email down. There's a way to sign up for the class, but if you want to get the free class and Zoom link for the free class, you'll need to sign up on this. So let's take this message into prayer. Knowing that there is a power for good in the universe. It is the power of love. It is the power of peace. It is the power of God, Allah, Elohim, the sacred grandmother tree, wisdom, and divine intelligence. That power flows through every single person in this room, and I give thanks for this community coming together, mighty but small, loving, spreading the word of love. I give thanks for this. I release this word into law, and together we say, and so